The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome. Once again, my name is Michael Kane. I'm the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. Today, we have a victory to talk about. CHD helped stop EMR legislation, poison pill legislation in DC, and I have the head of the litigation team in the EMR and Wireless Harms Department, Scott McCollough, to discuss this remarkable victory. Then Merrill Nass is going to be interviewing Beverly Johansson on homegrown food independence, aka gardening. So they're going to get into that. Stick around. This is a great hour for us to go over everything. First off, yesterday was a big day for CHD, for MAHA supporters. We stopped HR 2289 from being heard in the Rules Committee. It was scheduled to be heard. This is a bill that would preempt local control over cell towers, over wireless technology. This was a darling bill of the telecom industry, and it was stopped in its tracks yesterday. What does that mean? Is it dead? Is it gone? Could it come back? Well, there's no one better to discuss this with than attorney Scott McCollough. We will have him on to talk through this. Really exciting day. So many moving parts. So much happened over the weekend behind the scenes for us to line up this important victory. But before we get into that, as always, we have news. Breaking news, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has ended the mandatory flu shot mandate for military members. This is a really big deal. We have a number of people kicked out of the military over the COVID shot mandate, and some came back and still couldn't go to service because of flu shot mandates. This is an excellent step in the right direction. Thank you so much to Secretary Hegseth for doing this. This just reminds me about Duty to Disobey, the Children's Health Defense film that is coming out this June about the horror that our military men and women went through when they chose to decline the COVID shot. We have a June 30th one-day screening in films that we just put out an action alert about. But before that, there is going to be some more information, another event that we're not ready to announce yet, but we will be announcing soon. Stay tuned to CHD, be on our email list, tune into CHD TV. That's going to be coming for sure. Some of the big news recently, Donald Trump has appointed a potential new CDC director, Erica Schwartz. Cause for real concern. MAHA activists criticize Trump's pick to lead the CDC. This was in The Defender just a few days ago. One of the first to criticize this pick for CDC was the legendary Aaron Siri. Aaron Siri went onto his Twitter and said, Trump's pick to head the CDC, Erica Schwartz, would likely be a disaster. Schwartz led nationwide COVID-19 vaccine deployment, and her long track record of directly issuing rights-crushing civilian and military vaccine mandates, including mandating injections of smallpox, anthrax, and flu vaccines into the U.S. forces, and disciplining those that refuse, reflects she lacks the basic ethics and morals to lead the CDC. This agency does not need another cheerleader for industry. It needs a regulator over industry. Jeffrey Tucker published in the Epoch Times questions for nominee for CDC director. These are excellent questions that should all be asked. Go check that out. The great Jeffrey Tucker of Brownstone Institute, a brilliant man, author, intellectual, breaking down the nuts and bolts of what we should be asking Schwartz before she gets confirmed during her confirmation hearing. So stay tuned to all of that. CHD will be reporting on it closely. Jeffrey Jackson just posted on his Twitter account, overview of the new UK COVID-19 inquiry. Yes, the United Kingdom has had an inquiry into COVID. The inquiry acknowledged the following, quote, the current system of payment for those injured as a result of having a COVID-19 vaccine requires reform because it ain't working. The inquiry acknowledges the suffering of those of whom vaccines led to serious injury and death. It is imperative that a sufficiently supportive government scheme is in place to help the minority of people and their loved ones who suffer serious injury following vaccination. The inquiry continues and goes on to say, the inquiry recognizes that some of the vaccine injured and bereaved sharing their experiences online felt stigmatized and ignored when their content was labeled as misinformation. The inquiry was also told that when COVID-19 vaccines were rolled out, little was done to publicize the scheme, and a significant number of those who had been injured or bereaved as a result of the vaccine were unaware of it. Let's pull this down. Good for the United Kingdom for having an inquiry. It might not be the depth of an inquiry that we need, but those are some great conclusions that came there. We need some form of inquiry, some form of resolution for this in the United States. That's why Children's Health Defense, Maha Institute, Brownstone Institute have launched the COVID Justice Resolution. We have over 35,000 signatures on this, and we're pushing the United States Senate to pick up this resolution for COVID justice. Some official federal agency needs to say, we got it wrong. No one's done that. We have individuals who have done that. Senator Ron Johnson, God bless him, Senator Rand Paul, a whole bunch of people have stepped up and said the right things, but no federal body has taken any responsibility. Go to covidjustice.org, sign it, call your representatives, call your senator's office, tell them we need a reckoning on COVID. We need acknowledgement. And lastly, I reported this over at Teachers for Choice, protecting free speech. NYC Councilwoman Vicky Palladino's speech is under attack, and so is her job. Vicky Palladino is, they are attempting to remove her from her position as a city council member in New York City because of some of the speech she chose to engage on her social media platforms. Well, she's in court suing, fighting back, and doing quite well. I don't agree with everything that Vicky said. I completely support her right to say whatever it is she feels she needs to say, and then we can debate, and then we can argue, and then we can fight. We can do what we ever need to do. But the idea that unelected individuals can have a committee and get rid of an elected official for speech she said online, no. I'm glad she has a great attorney in Jim Walden. And for those who don't know, Vicky Palladino in 2022 had a rally for us in Queens at the Unisphere. There's the very famous Unisphere in Flushing Meadow Park. We had over 300 people calling for the fired unvaccinated workers to be brought back to our jobs. Vicky Palladino stood with fired unvaccinated workers in New York City. Now we stand with her. God bless Vicky for what she's done. I don't have to agree with everything she's ever said to support her, and I do support her. Okay, that's it for the news portion of this, and with that, I'm really happy and excited and honored to bring on attorney Scott McCollough to discuss what's recently happened in D.C. just yesterday. Scott, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Okay, so on Friday, I got a call from your colleague, Miriam Eckenfels, who heads up the EMR and Wireless Harms Department of CHD. And she said to me, Michael, HR 2289 is moving into the Rules Committee on Monday. So we got to put in some work over the weekend. And this is a typical move. I see it in Albany, New York with the legislature. We see it all the time. When there's an unpopular bill or one that might get pushed back, announce it late on a Friday, try to push it through on Monday. Hopefully people don't see it on the weekend. And so, me, Miriam, yourself, we all got to work over the weekend to try to strategize on this. Tell people what is HR 2289 to start, and then tell them what happened over the weekend to the best that you can.
Sure. First, a general description of the bill. What it does is it tells local jurisdictions, which have always been responsible for zoning, placement of infrastructure, land use authorizations, use of their right-of-way, told them that they can't do what they have always done, with wireless. It separates wireless out from all of the other kinds of land use regulation that's always gone on at the local area, and basically tied their hands. It said you can't decide whether a cell tower is necessary. You can't decide whether the cell tower, even if necessary, is in the right place, or more specifically, the least worst place. It said you have to put these applications in the front of the line and dispense with them in a very short period of time, over and above all of the other people who, maybe have been trying to get a permit to add a room to your house, or a new front porch, or maybe put up a fence, who've been trying to run the gauntlet of the bureaucracy for quite some time. All that stuff has to sit. Wireless companies get to go in the front, and it's a rubber stamp. All of the decisions on wireless construction, placement, and operation would have effectively been made by the wireless companies themselves and the Federal Communications Commission. The rest of it was just a sham. It was a done deal, the way this bill was written. It took the public out of the process. People wouldn't get notice if a cell tower, like the one behind me here, was proposed to be put in, their front yard on the sidewalk in the right of way, or maybe immediately over the other side of the fence of their property. They don't get notice. They don't get an opportunity to go to their local authorities and say, this thing doesn't belong here. It's ugly. It'll reduce my property values. It'll raise my insurance rates. It's actually going to shoot energy over my land and prevent me from using my land. Now I won't be able to put up a second story right next to the fence because I'll be exposed to radio frequency radiation, even that exceeds the FCC's silly limit. It just wipes everybody out of the process. It's a rubber stamp designed to just let the wireless companies have their way.
So this is perhaps the worst possible thing that could happen to you and CHD's EMR and wireless harms division, because, correct me if I'm wrong, nearly every victory we've had has been based on local ordinance, has been based on the process that the local community and the local jurisdiction has put in place. That's where you have been able to stop cell towers from being erected, stop cell towers from the process from starting on top of a school, and to have an intervention. So if this bill becomes law, you have no legal recourse to stop anything ever again in this country. Is that an overstatement, or am I basically correct?
That was certainly the intent, and it would have been the effect. The only chance people would have had would be to go to the Federal Communications Commission and argue against placement on very, very, very limited grounds, which, by the way, the FCC is right now trying to take away as well. Let me just be really clear here. The wireless industry and the Federal Communications Commission and some folks in Congress think that people have no rights. They shouldn't have any opportunity to participate in the process. They don't have any opportunity, should not have an opportunity to object, even though they are the ones most directly affected by placement of these things. Now, let me be really clear here, though. We're not really against wireless itself.
Right.
We just think that there are some downsides that must be taken into account, and the people who are affected by it should have some voice, at least, in where this infrastructure is being placed. And this bill would have taken it away. It would have sent it all to the FCC, which is a hostile forum because it's captured by the industry.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So I get this call on Friday. Me and Miriam start talking, and Miriam starts telling me that, we need allies on this. We need help on this. And one of the suggestions was to get Maha Action to write a letter. Tony Lyons is the president of Maha Action. He agreed to that. He recently had Miriam on the Maha Action call. this past Wednesday. Interesting timing. She was on that call on Wednesday. 2 days later, they're pushing this bill forward as hard as they can. Shout out to Tony Lyons for writing this letter, because then on Monday morning, we were able to get this to, tons of elected officials in the House on the Hill. So Monday that happened. This litter breaks. We get it out. We start pushing it out on social media. And I believe there were some Republicans that this had an impact on. There were some people who changed their position or were willing to. I'm not sure how public that is or not, or what degree you can talk to that. But to whatever degree you can, talk about that just a little bit.
On Monday and over the weekend, several Republicans in the caucus did tell leadership that this was just a bridge too far. I'm not in a position to name names, but it soon became apparent to the leadership that this rule would not pass on the floor. Now, I don't want to, the process in Congress is really, really crazy. Normal human beings can't understand how it all works. But what the Rules Committee was going to do was basically devise the rules for how this bill would be debated on the floor, and whether any amendments on the floor would be allowed for it. And there would have been a vote on the rule. And then if the rule passed, there would be another vote just straight up and down after very, very limited debate on the bill itself. Well, a lot of people just told the Rules Committee, you bring this rule to the floor, we're going to vote against it. They could only lose 3 votes in the Republican caucus because all of the Democrats were going to vote no. And when they got more than 3, they realized this ain't going to work. So they pulled.
Yeah. And, I've done a lot of advocacy work in Albany, in the Capitol in New York, and nothing gets brought to a floor vote for sure, unless they know it's going to pass. They've already tallied it up. They've already whipped the votes behind the scenes and stuff. In a committee, I have seen sometimes they'll go to a committee vote and roll the dice. But it looks like they weren't willing to roll the dice this time. It was set for 4 p.m. yesterday, Monday, for HR 2289 to be in the Rules Committee. But hours before that happened, leadership pulled it. They pulled it. They weren't even going to bring it into the committee. They thought it better. Let's tuck this away. Our little late Friday evening shot at trying to push this through apparently failed, and they weren't even going to go through the motions. In my opinion, that's a firm example of children's self-defense, of MAHA flexing our muscle and it having an impact, and them realizing, oh, wow, this issue, we're not going to be able to just ram this one through. My question on that is, what's next? Right? Is this dead? Or can we just kind of lay back? Oh, thank God. Is it going to have life again? What do you're really foremost expert in this field, especially what happens on the federal level. What do you foresee happening?
First of all, yeah, the CHD and all the folks we work with in the community, the advocacy community, we really did work an extraordinary amount over the weekend to get the word out and to get people to call and write. And so it wasn't, yes, MAHA was big, our action alert was big, but what really, really also turned the tide was people emailing and calling in response to the action alerts. Let's not forget, we just kind of help people be aware of what their elected representatives are about to do to them. And it's the people themselves that ultimately have an impact. So thanks to everyone who responded to the action alerts over the weekend. It was great. I mean, thousands and thousands of calls and email. Now, what's next? Okay, first of all, they pulled this from the calendar. What that means is this coming Friday, they can put it up again. Okay, they may just wait until, they think people aren't watching. They may try to pull the same ruse again. I'm hopeful that won't occur. I'm hopeful maybe it might even get sent back to the originating committees on the House side. There were 2 of them. energy and commerce being the main one. And maybe some work could be done to make some changes to the bill, although, frankly, it wouldn't look anything the same if it was done rationally. There's other possibilities, and this is what folks really need to be looking out for. You know, another common trick in Congress is if a standalone bill doesn't make it, what they'll do is they'll fold it into something else, a larger must-pass bill.
Right.
Something where, you know, there's so many goodies in the bill, it's all Christmas treed up, that some of the ones who are against it will swallow the wireless toad because they get a bridge in their district. So you got to watch out for this thing being just added on to a must-pass bill. There's been some discussion of it maybe getting folded into a reconciliation bill. I'm not sure how that would work since this isn't about congressional spending, but there's been some discussion of it. So I think this bill, frankly, it at some point it may show up again zombie-like. And so what we all need to be doing is we need to get in there. We need to get our long knives out. We need to sever the head and make sure it never comes back again. So, then what will happen, and I'm sorry, it's just taking long. Then what will happen is we expect the Federal Communications Commission to try to do the same thing. They've already got that teed up in a proceeding going. I think that they were hoping for congressional cover. Since they're maybe not going to get that, they may just do it on their own.
So, Scott, you read my mind. The FCC. So this is the federal agency under the executive branch that regulates this stuff. And like you said, cover from Congress, nothing's better for them than black and white statutory law. It's very difficult to push back against that. It's very difficult to sue if there's a statutory law passed by Congress, signed by the president. They don't have that now, but they do have an FCC that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think currently right now leadership is favorable to telecom and the wireless industry. So talk to us just a little bit in the little time we have left here. What could happen there? Is there anything that we're able to do and push back on that? What should we be looking for in terms of what's coming from the FCC?
Let me push back against what you said. They're not just favorable to, they're a wholly owned subsidiary of the wireless industry.
Got it.
Okay, they're lapdogs. They are completely captured. And, you know, this isn't just a Republican thing. It's a Republican and Democrat thing. It's been bipartisan over there at the FCC for many years. The wireless companies and the other telecom companies own the FCC. The people that are affected by it are just a hindrance, people to be ignored, set aside. You have no rights. This is all about fattening the wallets of these globalist corporations.
So, well, thanks for that rosy outlook. But so we need a dose of reality. It's good. So given that, that means the odds aren't in our favor when it comes to the FCC, that there's a good chance they're going to try some form of regulation. But doesn't that leave open the possibility of lawsuit, of legal action? If they're not operating off a statutory law, there could be constitutional violations, and a number of violations could be arising by these regs.
Yeah, I mentioned a minute ago, the FCC's already got this teed up under their existing authority. And thousands of people wrote the FCC in comments saying, don't do this. You can't do this. Right. If you do this, we're taking you to court. And it would be, you know, there'd be many challenges. I don't think they have the authority under existing law to do many of the things that they said. The most important thing about all of this is, remember, 4.5 years ago, the DC Circuit told the FCC that it had to take another look at its RF exposure limit because it really could not give a rational explanation why those over 30-year-old exposure rules made sense given where we are now. And in light of all of the scientific evidence showing that exposures at the limits still cause biological effects, many of which can be harmful. Now, you've heard us many times go through the list of all of these, so I won't again, but let's just make sure everybody understands this stuff is harmful to people, especially children. It's also bad for all other life on Earth. Farmers and ranchers, it's killing their livestock. It's ruining their soil. So if the FCC tries to push this through, then yes, we'll have to take them to court. And I think there would be strong grounds to get it overturned, simply because they would need legislation like just failed to really do what they want to do.
Scott, you brought up a landmark decision, court case that you were at the helm of, that you led, and it's a historic victory. But it's so frustrating to see the federal government drag its feet on what they're required to do, what the judge said they're required to do. Hopefully, as we move forward, as we continue our advocacy efforts, hopefully we start to see some changes happening in that landscape. I'll say my prayers for that. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This segment is over. But Scott McCollough, God bless you and the work you did. It was just great working with you and Miriam over a long weekend to do things that a lot of people didn't see, but that did really have an impact in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your great work. All right. It was a great victory. It truly, truly was. And yeah, we have to still be on our toes. We have to still watch out. The reconciliation bill that Scott talked about comes from appropriations. Appropriations about the money, allocating money to different federal expenditures. Reconciliation is making that money make sense. So they're only supposed to come in and talk about money. But sometimes they talk about other things when they got an agenda to get through. So we got to watch for that. We got to watch what the FCC is doing. And say your prayers, because there is definitely a good chance we could see some good things happening in this area. Don't go anywhere, because right now I'm going to hand it off to an absolute legend in our movement who is going to be talking about homegrown food security, aka gardening. Let's give it to Dr. Merrill Nass.
Good morning, CHD. Thank you, Michael, for actually giving us some good news for a change. Let me adjust my screen here a little bit. Today, we're going to try to encourage people to start gardening. It's a very good time with the Strait of Hormuz closed and food predicted to increase in price greatly over the next year, even into next summer, because of the costs of fertilizer and transportation, et cetera, which are going up 40 to 50%. Now, you may remember that we did two symposia, Door to Freedom and CHD did two symposia called The Attack on Food and Farming and How to Fight Back, one in March of 2023, one in September of 2024. And Beverly Johansson gave us a talk in that early 2023 symposium on how she learned to be a gardener late in life when she had retired from her professional career and had a very productive, very ambitious garden in Stockholm, in the Stockholm area, which is very far north. So much further north than I am, even in central Maine. And Beverly is going to talk to us about what it took, why it's a good idea, how to do it. And so I'm going to start with letting Beverly just talk about how she decided to do this and what it meant to her. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon, as we have it in Stockholm in Sweden, and we have lovely weather, so it's been a long hard winter, but I'm just getting ready to start up my garden now, and it feels great. And as you said, you know, I started this when I retired from work, and I'd never been a gardener before. I wouldn't even say I had green fingers before. I always used to say I killed my indoor plants, you know, I just couldn't, and I realized that it's not a skill, it's not an inborn skill, it is a focus thing. I wasn't focused on that. And once you focus on the task, then you can do it. And I think everyone can do it, given the focus. So when I made that presentation that you talked about, Meryl, we had another garden. We had a very large garden, which was about 500 square meters. Since that, then, life has gone on. We got divorced. I found a new place very quickly and scaled down my garden to about half the size. So I now have 10 beds, of which half of them are normal ground level beds. And I decided I would test raised beds. I saw it as an opportunity to test a few new methods. Winter of 23, I set about making my new garden, and we made beds that hopefully will not rot for quite a long time, so as little wood as possible, and using a very high quality pine wood and concrete, very thin concrete slabs to enclose the soil. And then the other beds are traditional beds, much easier to build. I would say if I was going to do it again, I built the high beds because I'm getting older, and I thought they would, prevent a lot of backache. It's just a different type of backache you get. You exchange one backache for another. So I would personally not use raised beds in the future, but they work perfectly well. They work very well. And there are definitely some advantages in raised beds too. So here I am with my third growing season, 24, 25. Yeah, third growing season coming up.
In the new bed.
In the new beds.
Yes.
The reason, yes, exactly. And the reason I started in the first place, here's my garden behind me, was just the things that you mentioned in the beginning, Meryl. Being aware that we are living in times which are very uncertain. There's a lot going on geopolitically, which we can't control. Wars. We had pandemics, discussions about climate effects, political instability. And in that sort of world, you realize how we live in a world of convenience, and we're used to convenience. We're used to things working. We're used to getting water in our taps and an electricity in our contacts. We're used to being able to hop onto a flight and fly anywhere in the world. And we're used to having food in bountiful quantities on the supermarket shelves. And we realized that that is not something you should take for granted. Yes. What can we influence? We can't influence easily what's going on in the world, but we can influence what is happening around us. And one of the big things is food, giving us resilience and a feeling of agency that we can do something about our situation. We can, at least to a certain extent, secure our food supply and not be as dependent on the fragility of the systems around us. So that's just a little bit of background.
So you decided to use something called the no-dig method. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. We did a lot of research and we decided that the no-dig method made a lot of sense. And I'm thinking about your viewers who are now potentially thinking about gardening, don't have much time. You have to get started quite soon if you're going to do it this year. It is a very quick and easy way to get started. That is a big advantage here and now and going forward in the spring. Just without going into a lot of detail, what it means is I have a lawn here. On the lawn, you can roll out a thick layer of cardboard, dump a whole load of compost on top of that, and plant into it. As simple as that. And the theory behind it is that you are feeding the soil from above. And that has a lot of advantages. When you dig the soil, you are destroying so many things under the surface. You're destroying the fungi networks. You're destroying the structure of the soil. You were bringing up microorganisms and pathogens and weed seeds to the surface to allow them to do bad things. And what does the soil do when it's disturbed like that? It creates more weeds because it's trying to repair itself. When you work with no dig, you allow the soil to do what it's meant to do under the surface, and you feed it from above. You're feeding the fungi and the soil and the microorganisms. You're not feeding the plants because that's the soil's job.
So let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
And let's say that the cardboard is there to kill the weed, to kill the grass, which becomes weeds when you want to garden on it. But it's also permeable, so the rain can go through, and you're still not really disturbing very much the soil underneath. Within a few weeks or months, that cardboard is going to turn into dirt. And so you're not going to see it anymore, but you've got this really rich compost on top, and as the soil will bring nutrients down below from the compost and will to feed the roots of the plants you plant will actually go through what was once your cardboard layer. Am I right about that?
Meryl, one of my big surprises in the first year of no-dig gardening was, we had, on our first garden, we had very compacted land. And you're putting 20 centimeters of compost on the land.
So wait a minute, that's about 4 to 5 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's more than that. I'm sorry. It's 6 to 8 inches. Yes.
Yeah, 6 to 8 inches. That's right.
So that's a lot of compost. It's hard for us to find that kind of that much compost. Where did you get it from?
Well, I buy my compost in sacks, and it is delivered on a big Europa pallet, and then we just put the sacks of compost on the ground. Very convenient. But
okay, do you know where it's coming from? Do you know what is in the bag?
It's organic. It's organic, and yes, I do. And it is certified organic, no weeds. It's mixed with a little bit of peat moss, I think, and some other things to make it more less heavy. But definitely, it's a luxury to buy it in bags. We can talk a little bit about compost if you would like to.
So in the first year, people don't have compost if they're just starting out. So the question is, what are they going to do? They can make a mix. They can buy peat moss, which is relatively cheap. They can mix it with some soil, and then they could buy some in the United States, Omni certifies organic soil mixtures, soil amendments. So they could buy a little bit and make their own homegrown mix, I think.
You can. And I'm sure that you must be able to buy chicken pellets as well. Chicken,
right.
You could mix those in. You could, to help the structure, you can put in oyster shells, crushed oyster shells.
Yes.
And some rock dust.
Right. Exactly. Green sand if you want, and things like that.
Yeah.
But you can, anyway, you will need a wheelbarrow if you're working with the soil, and you can make your mixtures in that. If you have any farms around you, you can talk to them about what do they feed their animals, and how much it will cost you to buy the bedding for the animals, buy the straw or whatever it is. Once they have used it and it is filled with urine and manure, and that's the stuff you want. And then can
I just interrupt you there, just with one proviso? Sometimes this bedding is infused with herbicides, so you have to really ask them, is there any herbicides in the bedding, because that is not good for your plants. So with that proviso, yeah.
Absolutely. And what are they feeding the animals?
And you can also go beyond that and ask them if you can have the bedding mixed with cow manure or horse manure, because they want to get rid of their cow manure and horse manure. You can't use that the first year, though. It'll be too hot. It'll burn your plants. But you can put it in the corner of your garden, cover it with a tarpaulin, leave it there, and then use it the next year.
Exactly. And rabbit manure you can use fresh, but the others you need to let sit and ferment for a year.
That's
All right. So the no dig may require a little digging if you need to dig up some dirt to make your own homegrown mix. But anyway, you get this, you create or buy a mix of very nutritious for the plants, not for us directly. And you simply put it on the ground and grow your plants in it. And so when you did this, how did the plants do?
You know, this was the thing that was like magic to me, which I did not understand, because I was thinking, how are carrots going to survive in this new, with this hard soil underneath and only 15 to 20 centimeters of compost on the top? So I was a little bit skeptical, and cardboard in between, of course. But my first harvest, you didn't have to dig. It was like a warm knife through butter. You could pull the carrots out of the land just like this.
Wow.
Somehow, the earthworms, I guess, had managed to sort of, bring the compost down into the earth. Something had happened with the whole sort of structure of the earth underneath, which made it start to change its structure and its hardness. And for me, that was just the most amazing thing that I still don't understand to this day. So yes, one thing I can say is every year you have crop failures, and you never know which crop is going to fail. You don't know why, and that's just happened every year from the first year. But in general, it has produced some fantastic vegetables.
Yes. And each year you're going to have some that grow amazingly well, and
Yes.
you don't know why.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can't predict, but you'll usually get a crop of everything, some things very few and some things way too many.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what if someone is really worried about starvation and famine and wants to plant crops that that can be stored for a long time, even without a lot of preparation, and will carry them over? What do they do?
Okay. First of all, if you're a total beginner, I wouldn't be too ambitious in terms of the number of beds you have. Better to have a smaller number of beds and to learn and to make your mistakes and to tend to those beds well. It's better to have 2 well-tended beds than 12 that you feel overwhelmed with. But if you're an experienced gardener, then you probably have more beds. But I would say, think in terms of not what can I eat this August, but how can my garden serve me a long way into the winter? And it changes the way in which you think about the vegetables you grow. Many hobby gardeners, and there's nothing wrong with this, but many hobby gardeners will grow the summer vegetables. They'll grow the tomatoes and the cucumbers and the courgettes and the lettuce and the spring onions, and that's lovely, but it's not serving you into the winter. So I would say, what do you need in terms of crops that will give you more resilience year-round? And I would divide them into 2, maybe 3 categories. And the first category is the crops that will keep you alive, that give you energy and calories, and the crops that will keep you healthy, that will give you vitamins and minerals, and then the crops that give you joy. You can have a little patch for the crops that give you joy, because that's important too, isn't it? Joy in your life. And if you look at the crops that give you energy, the king of those, I think, is the potato. Really easy to grow, bountiful harvests, stores very well, particularly if you can keep it at quite low temperatures, 2 to 4 degrees. It will store at higher temperatures, but don't expect it to last the whole winter in that case. And it's got lots of energy, lots of carbohydrates. Peas and beans are my favorites. I love peas and beans. They're a source of protein, vitamins. Great freezers. You can blanch them and freeze them. I like I like shelling peas, and I like broad beans, or fava beans, they're sometimes called. And then there's something that many people overlook.
Let me ask also, let me interrupt. So for the beans and peas, you're also probably drying them and saving them for soups and stews and other dishes in the winter.
No, I freeze them all. I blanch them and freeze them all in.
So,
and
okay,
have them in.
so you're not
have them in
letting them
freezer.
go late and then save the
No.
seeds.
I will sometimes. I've tried saving beans and peas for seed storage. They work very
Yes.
well, and so I've done that. But everything I have is I vacuum pack in small packages and put them in my freezer. Yeah. And then there's winter squash. And winter
Yes.
squash, I think, is an underrated vegetable. It's beautiful. It's packed with vitamins and fiber, and it lasts a long time. It's one of the longest lasting vegetables that you can keep in temperate rooms. So if you have a room that's at like 15 degrees, you can keep it there and it'll last until March, April the next year.
Yes.
So those are the keeping you alive.
Yeah, and it
Favorites.
tastes quite good. I made wonderful soups out of winter squash.
Yeah.
So, yes, and you can
roasted.
freeze it if you want. You just cut it up into pieces and put it into a bag and freeze it. You don't need to blanch it or anything.
Yeah.
And then take it out for soup. So, okay. So that's going to keep you alive, and that is what kept the Irish alive until they had 2 bad years, and the British, which is where you're from, decided that it was more important to get their taxes in the crops and not leave anything left for the Irish. And
We have a lot to be embarrassed about, the Brits, yes.
But the United States got a lot of Irish people, and we learned how to cook potatoes as well. Now, there's also sweet potatoes. Now, most sweet potatoes, you need a warmer climate, but there are some that you can grow. I haven't had great luck with them, but sweet potatoes are another, even more nutritious form of potato if you can grow them.
Exactly. I've grown them in my greenhouse. I don't have a greenhouse anymore. I have this terrace place, but and they have worked in the greenhouse, but yeah, I don't grow them anymore because, as you say, the climate is not really suitable. Yeah.
So you
And
grew
then-
them in the greenhouse and then moved them into the soil?
No, I just grew them
in
in buckets in the greenhouse. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's something people might be able to do then.
Yeah.
If they have an enclosed porch, that looks
Yeah.
like an enclosed porch. So you probably could do it on that porch as well. You might get a
If
little
it
less
gets enough sun, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they say, for any of these crops, 6 hours of sun really a day is maybe 4, but 6+ hours a day is pretty essential to get a good crop. So it depends on the sunlight, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, now what about the crops that you grow for fun?
Well, first of all, the crops that keep you healthy.
Yes.
And that's the second most important. I would say the fun is my third priority. And the healthy crops it's the things that give you vitamins and minerals. And you're talking about the green vegetables, the kale, the cabbage, the carrots, the beetroots. If you have storage that is cold enough again, so that you can keep them a long time. Onions are fantastic. They're great storers, and they are great flavorings and also have a lot of nutrients in them. So those are the things that I would also concentrate on. Things like broccoli, it takes a lot of space. So I wouldn't, I do grow it, but it's not really an effective use of space if you're talking about making the most out of your garden for resilience purposes. Yeah. And then the fun things, whatever you like, if you like tomatoes or you like cucumber or you like your spring onions, just to feel that you have some flavorings. Herbs is a great thing, of course, that doesn't take a lot of space. So, yeah. So just to change your mindset, these vegetables that I mentioned are probably not the most exciting vegetables, but they're the vegetables I've landed on that work best for me and that give me resilience going forward and take me through the winter.
Let's talk about, oh, okay. Now, before I do that, let's talk about the fun things you grow. Are you growing flowers?
In my other garden, I had a big flower bed to attract the bees. I don't have so many flowers. I have berries, and I have fruit trees, which attract, of course, the insects, and I have rhubarb. So all of my crops are functional crops. But you know, it is in my plan at some point to try and plant some flowers that attract bees. Otherwise, I'm not really interested in, you know, rose beds and things like that. It's, you know, I'd rather put my efforts into the vegetables.
Now, we saw a photo of your plants wrapped in something. What was that?
The photo of...
Yes, is
yes,
this row cover?
Yes. All of my vegetables, when they go in the ground, they're immediately covered with these nettings, insect nettings. They're on, apart from the plants that require pollination, I have those insect nets on from the beginning to the end of the season, and particularly for the brassicas, you know, the cabbages, the kales, they will get infested with insects and horrible caterpillars if you don't have the insect nets on. So that is just, I have a rule, everything is covered the whole season.
Yeah, I cover them part of the year, and you know, it's a question of putting the covers on and taking them off, and I'm often lazy about that. But I have found that if you use diatomaceous earth, and I sort of sprinkle it through a sieve, the same sieve I would use for flour, you wet the plants first, your brassicas, and then you sprinkle this stuff on, and any of the caterpillars that are on the plants will die. Because the diatomaceous earth is very sharp and it pierces their body and dries them out. So it's a good solution if you do get infested. So they start out as cabbage moths, is what we have lots of names for them. These little white moths, and they look very, you know, they look like nothing. They're small, but they come on and there's lots of them and they alight and they lay eggs on the plants that you don't see. And then they grow into caterpillars that are voracious and can grow very large. So you need to get rid of them one way or another.
And they live in the ground over the winter. That's the horrible thing.
Oh,
you know?
really?
So that's why, yes. And that's why they're larvae. And that's why you have to rotate your crops. So you never have the same crop in the same bed the next year, because the cabbage fly larvae will come up and infect your plants again from underneath. So once you've got them, it's difficult to get rid of them. And then you've got the carrot fly, which affects the carrots and the parsnips, which does, you know, a lot of damage too. So there's loads of things that really are interested in getting at your food. That's why I cover them.
It's expensive in a way to buy the netting, or I use what's called row cover here. It's a sort of it's plastic, but it almost has the consistency of paper or fabric. It's a woven or spun fabric that you put, and it allows the plants to grow and it pushes it out of the way. It's very light. So you invest in this stuff, and it isn't terribly expensive. But by the time you're buying your tools and everything you need, you invest, you know, a lot of money at the very beginning, and then it costs almost nothing after that. Because for most of my plants, I've saved the seeds, and you know, I already have the tools. It's just the water, pretty much. And depending how much compost you have, you may have to buy some soil amendments. I will have to buy peat moss, for example, each year.
Yeah.
Okay, so what should people do if they don't have access to land? How can they grow on a patio, or what can they do? Are there community gardens in Sweden?
Well, we have allotments in Sweden, but they are very hard to get hold of. But I think, and I could imagine that quite a lot of your viewers are probably thinking, well, this is all well and, if you have land, you can do this. But I would say growing vegetables. It's not a question of you can grow or you can't grow. It's a spectrum. And if you have a small space, you're on one end of the spectrum, but it can be a very meaningful end of the spectrum. So if we start with what can you do yourself, before we go on to how can you cooperate with others maybe to do things, you can, as you said, use a patio or a balcony if you have one, so long as there's enough sun. You can have a pot of potatoes, you can maybe have some greenery, some herbs, tomato plants. And the thing you're doing there, apart from providing a few vegetables for your own purposes, you're learning skills. And you're learning how vegetables behave. You're learning what they need and how to deal with insects that may invade. And so it's skills that you can apply if and when you get a bigger garden. Inside your windowsill, people dismiss windowsills and indoor gardening maybe with LED lights, but there's some fantastic things you can grow inside. Microgreens, tiny little versions of kale and green leaves, which can be very nutrient dense. And they take maybe 15-20 days to grow, so you can have a staggered planting so that you're always getting new microgreens on your table. Sprouts, broccoli sprouts, they're not that difficult to grow. They are more nutrient dense than broccoli heads. They have a lot more sulforaphane, which is a very a product that is very cancer fighting, I think, and very good for you. So sprouts, and also you can use your indoor areas for seeding plants that you're going to plant out later. So there's a lot you can do, definitely.
Right.
And if you don't want to do that, maybe the answer isn't in doing something individually. Maybe it's, as you mentioned, doing something in the community together with other people. Maybe you know of somebody who has a little plot of land but doesn't have the time. You have the time, you don't have the land. Maybe someone else has knowledge, and you all get together and you create magic together and you share the results of your work, and you've built a little community of friends, which is also very important in difficult times too, as you know.
Yes, exactly. Because people who have a big garden are always looking for help, and they will teach you. In fact, there's an organization for organic farmers can get help through woofers. And these woofers will travel, and they will get basically room and board. They'll get food and a place to sleep, and they have to help with the farm for a while, but they will learn organic farming. So it's sort of an apprenticeship program, and you can do it around the world.
Yes.
I think also the idea of planting potatoes in a bag or in a 5-gallon bucket, which you make holes at the bottom and on the sides, you can get several pounds of potatoes from one bag or bucket. And so if you could put 5 or 10 of them on a patio, you can get as many potatoes as you might from a real garden, and something to consider.
Yep.
So you had a big garden, you invested a lot in it, you got divorced, and then you had to start all over again from scratch. That would have been very daunting for me. How did you deal with it, and why did you start another big garden?
Well, I was considering taking over the old garden, and then I realized it's too big for me. It had a lot of forest, and you need to work with the forest. It had a lot of land, and the actual garden was too big for me to handle. So it was quite an easy decision in the end, even though emotionally I put a lot of work into it. So that was difficult to give up all the things that I put into it. But when we get older, Meryl, as you know, we don't have time to regret things. We don't have time to sort of say, well, oh God, life sucks. You just have to get on with it. And so I very, very quickly actually bought this place. I think it was within 3 months. I bought this place, and a couple of months later, I was starting the garden. So I knew that I wanted to be up and running as soon as possible. And I also saw it as an opportunity to correct some of the mistakes. Oh my God, there's me with my saxophone. To correct some of my mistakes, to scale down, to have a slightly different infrastructure to what I had before.
Yeah. I'm moving. Actually, I'm moving tomorrow, and I'm leaving my 30 by 40 foot garden. So what's that 10 by 13 meter garden? And I have a few things planted elsewhere as well. And it was getting to be too much for me. I kept expanding it, and then suddenly you realize now it's too big. It wasn't big enough, now it's too big. With everything else that I do, although, it would have been fine if I wasn't doing much else. And so I know it's a relief, but it's like a divorce, It's like I put a lot, I know what dirt is there, I know how this garden works. And I'm nervous and anyway, wondering what the next one is going to bring, which I will have to start from scratch. So, and I'm planning on doing just bags. I've got 24 bags, and luckily I have some woods. So I have 5 acres in the new place, mostly all wooded.
Okay.
So I've got good dirt, and I'm going to dig that up, put it in the bags, put them on a patio, and plant and see what happens. I've never tried that before.
And experiment, and make your mistakes and see, test your way forward. Yeah. It's sort of exciting.
I can't live without a garden. I have to plant things because watching them grow gives me a tremendous amount of peace and serenity, happiness. It's hard to explain. Maybe you were a psychologist once. Maybe you can explain some of that.
Well, there is a mounting body of evidence to show that working in gardens can actually improve your outlook on life, your mood. It can help. It can be as effective as antidepressives for minor depression, for not severe depression. I don't want to make false claims, but it can affect mood, and it can. And I think the reason for that is that there's maybe a combination of things. You become totally absorbed in a task, and when you're thinking about a task, you can't think about other things. It's difficult to think about other things when you're thinking about a task, and that's one of the things you use in cognitive therapy. You feel people learn to sort of fill their minds with other things sometimes to relieve them of their bad thoughts. And then the other thing is just being close to nature, having your hands in the soil, whether or not you believe in grounding, but grounding is, the idea that you stay close to the earth and you feel the soil, you feel the seasons, you can see how nature takes its course, and that is very healing. So I think there's so many psychological benefits, especially in the times we're living in, when we feel, I think a lot of people are feeling there's a huge anxiety in the world at the moment, people feeling that they can't influence their situation. And one of the worst causes of stress is a feeling of lack of agency, lack of being able to influence your situation. And with a little garden, you can influence that, and you can do some good, and you can feel that you're doing something to increase your resilience. So I think we shouldn't ignore, we can say the first harvest is the vegetables, and the second harvest is the psychological harvest. I really think, I do believe in that. And if I think about my divorce, it definitely helped me to get through that period, being occupied with something that was so productive and joyful.
Yeah, it is. It puts you close to nature and sort of God, and it's, whatever's happening in the world, the plants come up. and the plants want to be there, and it's bounty. It's sort of God-given. You just put a seed in, or you're putting a lot of compost. At this point, I don't put too much, some compost, but the plants come up anyway, and they are giving to us. And it is some sort of, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world kind of feeling that I get. Beverly, you have a wonderful website that explains much about gardening. And do you want to give that to us? We'll put it in the show notes, so it'll go below this video.
Yeah.
But you can tell the audience.
I'm a bit embarrassed. I can't remember the address, but it's that one. It's
Okay,
the Wix
there it
site.
is. nodigsweden.wixsite.com/English, because it's in English and Swedish.
And
So you
Swedish,
can
exactly.
go to either, whichever you prefer.
And I've
Complicated.
tried. I've tried to condense everything that I have learned and I know into something that maybe can be helpful to people. And I did it during COVID, when a lot of people became interested. They had time on their hands, and at least here in my region in Sweden, there were a lot of people who were interested in starting gardening. So I originally did it for the Swedish people in my vicinity, and then I thought, well, why not do an English version too? So yes, but there are other resources. There is Charles Dowding, one of my big favorites, an Englishman. He has, and I think I sent a link to your people, he has lots of different guides, and amongst other things, a guide to people who want to start up, a beginner's guide, exactly. Another thing I would love to mention is ChatGPT. We didn't have that sort of thing when we started our garden, and it's not perfect, and it can sort of go rogue on you at times, but I gave it a little test just yesterday to see how well would it do if I tell it I want to start a no-dig garden, and I live in Sweden and I have these constraints, please give me a plan. And then it comes back to you, and you can say, well, no, I want this and I want that, and you can refine it. And it does a reasonably good job. So don't ignore that.
I never would have thought of that. So it actually gave you a garden plan, told you what to plant when? Yeah.
Well, I didn't go that far. I didn't go into the detail of give me a plan of when to seed, when to plant, when to harvest. But I think it would have. If I told the ChatGPT exactly, the parameters that I'm talking about, I would normally put those, because I have a large garden, I would normally put those into an Excel program, and it works that out all automatically. But ChatGPT, I'm sure, could do a pretty good job too. So, and it can also give you advice. How do I handle this? I've got this problem. It's an amazing resource. I would use that. I would recommend that for beginners too, just to complement all the other resources that they have.
Well, thank you very much again. And I hope we have you back maybe late in the summer to see how things are doing, and what you had an amazing amount of food put up, prepared for storage, and people were very interested in how you stored food. So maybe around September, August, we'll go back, if you're okay with that, and look at what you're doing with all your crops.
Absolutely.
Great.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. Okay. Nice to talk to you, Meryl.
Yes, nice to talk to you too, Beverly. Thank you again.
Okay, bye-bye.
So tell us your name.
My name is Nancy.
And Nancy, so let's go back to when this happened. How old were you when this happened?
I was 19. It was back in 1991.
Why would you take a meningitis?
Well, it's funny. The only reason I remember this shot, because I wouldn't have remembered any of my childhood shots, was I remembered back in 1991, I got a letter in the mail from my college saying that I needed a shot. My mother believes it was the meningitis booster. And the only reason I remember, because I thought it was odd, I had already gone to college for a year before they told me I needed this shot. And looking back, I remember being at the doctor's office, and then within a week I was back at the doctor's office because I had collapsed. My mother said I turned purple. I collapsed. I fell into a statue. We had it cut open my head, and I was back at the doctor's in less than a week, and then my life was never the same. I was told I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I was told I had Epstein-Barr virus. I've had all kinds of issues. Luckily, early on, I started taking vitamins because I think it protected me in certain ways over the years. But I've, at points lost control of my legs, feeling in my hands. I lost control of my bodily functions at some points. And I was, at the time, I was working. I had a student teach, go to college, try and have a social life, and it was a nightmare ever since.
After that happened to you, did that make you rethink vaccines?
No,
completely?
I never put two and two together until I started researching in 2020 and looking into the flu shot. And then I started to realize how that was being pushed just before COVID, and I was like, And I had seen a video saying that if you got that, you'd test positive for COVID, and I was like, that could be interesting. And the more I researched, the more I realized, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I had a shot just before I collapsed, and my life was never the same, and I was told there was nothing wrong with me. I was told go home, take a nap. And it was just been, it's been years of torture because no one believes you, no one can see it.
So what was your diagnosis after the meningitis?
Okay, so first it was Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue syndrome, and then finally in 2004, I had a spinal tap. And they took like 6 vials of spinal fluid out of me. I collapsed, I fell, off the table. And and what was interesting was just before I had the spinal tap, I had a rash all over my feet for like a year. And I didn't know what it was. I went to a dermatologist. They gave me creams and didn't do anything. And as soon as I had that spinal tap and they pulled out 6 vials of spinal fluid, the rash started going away and it was gone within a couple of days after having it for over a year. So then I was treated for Lyme disease, which looking back, one of the top black box warning drugs was I had doxycycline for a year and a half. First I was on IV Rocephin for a month and a half. But now, finding out that the doxycycline is terrible.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
It's supposed to be like an antiparasitic, and it's funny, it's one of the things that Judy Mikovits mentions and how it completely messes up your microbiome, which I think is exactly what happened to me because I went downhill after getting even treated for the Lyme disease. It was even worse.
So who diagnosed you with Lyme disease?
Neurologist when he did the spinal tap.
Tell everybody
an
exactly
infectious
what
disease.
Lyme disease is.
Well, it's the corkscrew. What do they call it? The corkscrew parasite almost or something. It's supposed to travel through the muscles and through everything. And I've just I've had every kind of issue, but I fought through it because no one would believe me. So it's just everything's been a struggle. I've had to I'm a certified teacher. I have 3 certifications. But I haven't been able to I taught for like a couple of years part-time. I did jobs that I was, less qualified for because I physically couldn't do it. So it's just been a struggle. And then interestingly enough, I had my daughter in November 2010. And then this is before I made the connection between the vaccine. In 2010, I had her in November. I finally got back to church for Christmas, and a couple weeks later, on Channel 12, they said, "Oh well, if you were at this church, then you were exposed to hepatitis. So come get a hepatitis shot." And being a brand new mother, I was terrified. Could I give my kid hepatitis? So I went to the church, and they had a whole, triage or whatever you want to call it.
So you went back to the same church where the hepatitis was that was so scary, and to get a vaccine.
To get a vaccine, they were all set up. It was all set up in the auditorium. So I got that, and And it's funny because after I had my daughter, there was a month between when I got my daughter and when I had that shot. And I couldn't understand over the years why I kind of went downhill after I had my daughter. And now, after doing research, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I had that shot. And that would explain why I was so sick all the time after that. And I was thinking it was because, I was a new mom, not sleeping. But yeah, so that was another assault.
Okay, and you vaccinated your daughter?
With the children.
Just with everything.
The children one, yeah. And I went through hell with the Menatra shot. She had to get the Menatra shot, and they changed the meningitis shot. They changed that one in 2020 along with the Tdap, and people don't realize that.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I called multiple doctors because I knew the meningitis shot, the Menatra shot, was from the 70s, and that was the only one I was going to let them give my daughter, not the one in 2020, the same year as COVID. And so I called multiple doctors, and they were, oh yeah, we have it. And I'm like, it says Menatra. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, okay, well, double check. And they, oh no, well, it's Menquad-Phi or Menveo. And then there was another one. And I'm like, no, well, that's not Menatra because one's diphtheria based and one's tetanus toxoid. And I said, they're not the same, and and now they're given the Tdap along with the meningitis, and you're not supposed to give 2 tetanuses together. So because the Menatra was diphtheria based, this one is tetanus toxoid, the Tdap is tetanus, and they're like, oh, well, they normally give them together, and I'm like, well, it's not the same shot. And I went through hell just trying to get the right one for my daughter, even though I really didn't want her to have anything.
And now, when you see all the names on the bus and all the different injuries and all the dead babies and teenagers and from all the different shots, now what do you think about vaccines?
Oh, well, I knew, and I did in 2020 and about April, May of 2020, I did, just in my first day of research, I realized what was going on and what was coming. And
so we're done on vaccines?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, now, I'm really hoping the truth comes to light and people wake up. For me, absolutely not. I am trying as hard as possible to, my daughter wouldn't need one again until she's 16. I'm hoping by then they're done with, but I don't know.
Because of the Gardasil? These are the people that took.
Oh yeah, my niece had the Gardasil, and she was about to start her senior year, and she ended up with welts all over her body and down her throat, and she missed her first 2 weeks of senior year because of that. And but again, my sister never made the connection until I started researching in 2020, and she's like, oh wait, she had that one just before that happened to her.
And are you still suffering today?
I still am. I did. I follow a lot of people, and I've learned about the heavy metal detoxes, and that made a huge difference for me. Like the zeolite, that's the best thing I've taken in 32 years.
How long did you take zeolite for?
I noticed as soon as I started taking it, I noticed a difference. I've been taking it. I did my full detox, which was a month, twice a day for a month, and then after that, I do like 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll do it more.
So just to remind the viewers that Children's Health Defence does not give out medical advice. This is just the opinion of our guests here, and we're finding it fascinating to listen and make our own minds up.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to tell the people?
Do your own research, trust your gut, listen to your family when they tell you something's wrong. Don't brush it aside. Everyone always says, oh, that's never happened, this has never happened. It never happened until it happens, and it's better to be safe than sorry. I question everything now. I question food, I question anything.
Right. Thank you so much for telling us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.